My half-brother lied and lived free in my house for a year. His pregnant girlfriend ordered me out of my own house because it was Nathan's. But when I discovered his lies, I legally evicted them, and now he came back, destroyed, begging for another chance. My answer left everyone speechless. I'm 32 years old, work in accounting, and about a year ago I basically had to kick my half-brother out of my house. And honestly, there are still people in my family who treat me like I'm the villain of the story. I need to tell this whole thing because every time someone brings it up, like at family gatherings or whatever, they always act like I threw a newborn baby out on the street or something, when the reality is that my brother Nathan is literally a parasite who can't hold down a job for more than 3 months straight. But anyway, let me start from the beginning because otherwise this doesn't make sense. About 5 years ago, my mom died. She was only 58. Pancreatic cancer that killed her in 6 months from diagnosis. It was horrible. She left me the family house, a 3-bedroom house in a pretty decent neighborhood. It's nothing fancy, but it's in a good area, and the property is worth something. Nathan is my half-brother. My mom married his dad when I was like 12 and Nathan was 8. And we always had kind of a weird relationship. I mean, we weren't close, but we didn't hate each other or anything either. The thing is that Nathan was always kind of a mess with his life. You know, the type of person who always has excuses for everything. Like if the boss was an idiot, if his coworkers had something against him, if his girlfriend at the time was a psycho. Literally, it was always someone else's fault and never his. When Mom died, Nathan was living in an apartment with a roommate or something like that. I don't remember the details well because at that time, I was processing grief and taking care of all the legal part of the inheritance, which was a tremendous headache because my mom hadn't updated her will in years. So like 6 months passed after the funeral, and Nathan calls me one day, like 10 at night, and tells me he just got evicted from his apartment because he couldn't pay rent. That the roommate was an asshole who had kept his part of the deposit, basically, the same old story. He asked me if he could stay at my house, at the house that had been Mom's, just for a couple of weeks until he got something. And look, I'm not a monster. He's my brother, even if he's technically my half-brother, and we had just lost our mother, so I said yes. I set clear rules, or at least I thought I did. I told him he could stay in the guest room, but that he had to actively look for work, and that as soon as he had money for his own place, he would have to leave. Nathan said yes to everything. That obviously, that I was the best brother in the world, that he appreciated it so much. All that shit that people say when they need something from you. The first few weeks were weird but not terrible. Nathan would get up early, supposedly to look for work, although I had my doubts about how actively he was looking for it. He ate my food, used my internet, left his stuff everywhere, but well, it was temporary according to him. After like a month, he started bringing a girl, Melissa, who at first came to visit normally, but then basically started staying every night. I didn't say anything at first because I thought that eventually Nathan was going to leave anyway. But 2 months passed, then 3, then 4, and there was Nathan still in my house. Every time I asked him about work, Nathan had some new excuse. That he had an interview, but the guy was racist. Nathan is white, by the way. That he had gotten a job, but the schedule was impossible. That they had promised to call him, but they never did. Basically, just excuses. And Melissa was there more and more time, using my bathroom, my kitchen, watching Netflix in my living room like it was her house. I worked all day, and when I got home, I would find dirty dishes in the sink, the living room, a mess, and Nathan and Melissa sprawled on the couch watching TV. Like at the 6th month, Melissa announces to me, just out of nowhere while I was making breakfast before going to work, that she's pregnant. And I just stood there with the spoon in my hand thinking, are you kidding me? I said congratulations or something like that, but inside I was thinking this was going to get worse. And yes, it got worse. Nathan and Melissa got married like a month later, a super quick wedding at the courthouse with like 5 people including me, and after that Melissa basically officially moved in. It wasn't that she came to visit anymore. Now all her stuff was in the room with Nathan. She had clothes in my washing machine all the time, pregnancy products in my bathroom, and she started reorganizing my kitchen because according to her, things weren't in logical places. I tried to talk to Nathan several times. I told him that many months had already passed, that they needed to look for their own place because I needed my space. And he always said the same thing, that yes, that he almost had a job, that as soon as the baby was born, they were going to get organized, that he would pay me back everything someday. Just lies. The worst part was that Melissa started acting like the house was hers. She would bring her mom to visit without telling me, move my things around. One day she even tried to paint the guest room pink because it was going to be the baby's room, according to her. I told her no, that this wasn't her house to do whatever she wanted, and she got mad at me, told me I was insensitive. How could I not want my niece? They already knew it was a girl, to have a nice room. Niece who hadn't even been born yet, by the way. Like 9 more months passed, the baby was about to be born, and the situation was unbearable. I basically lived locked in my room when I was home, because I couldn't stand being in the living room with them. Nathan still didn't have a stable job. He had gotten something at a call center, but they fired him after 3 weeks because he was late all the time. Melissa didn't work because she was pregnant, and according to her, she couldn't even think about working in that condition. Which, well, is understandable to a certain extent, but it's not like she was doing anything to look for options after giving birth or anything. And then came the day that basically changed everything. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was in my room working on some office stuff I had brought home to get ahead, and suddenly I hear Melissa screaming my name from the living room. I come out thinking maybe she was in labor or something urgent, and I find her standing in the middle of the living room with her hands on her hips, like an angry Karen pose, and she says, "We need to talk about your situation here." I was confused. Like my situation? And Melissa tells me that I had been living in Nathan's house for a long time, that they were going to be parents and needed space, and that maybe it was time for me to start looking for my own place. I stood there not being able to believe what I was hearing. I told her, "Melissa, this is my house. I inherited this house from my mom." And she laughs, like nervous laughter, and says, "No, this was your mom's house, but now it's Nathan's because he's the male son." That's when I realized that Nathan had lied to her about who owned the house. He had made her believe during all those months that the house was his, probably to look like a good guy who had property or whatever. I told Melissa to sit down, and I explained to her, very clearly, that the house was in my name, that I paid all the utilities, property tax, everything, and that they had basically been living off my generosity all this time. Melissa turned white, then red, then started yelling at me that I was a liar, that Nathan had told her the house was his. How dare I make up those things? Nathan appeared at that moment, came out of the room where he had been taking a nap or whatever, and Melissa went at him screaming. It was a total disaster. Her crying and screaming, him trying to calm her down but unable to explain why he had lied, me standing there watching. Everything explode. Melissa packed a suitcase and went to her mom's house that same day, left Nathan there with me. I thought Nathan was going to leave too. Like, obviously this couldn't work anymore, but no, Nathan stayed. He told me he had nowhere to go, that Melissa was very angry and didn't want to see him, that he couldn't just go out on the street like that. I told him he had been lying all this time, that he had disrespected me and my house, and that he needed to leave. And Nathan told me something that left me cold. He said, "Technically, I'm your tenant. I've lived here more than 6 months. I have tenant rights. You can't just kick me out like that." I couldn't believe it. My own brother threatening me with tenant laws after everything I had done for him. I went straight to the internet that night, looked up everything about tenant laws in my state, and sure enough, he was right. Even though we didn't have any formal contract and he didn't pay me rent, since he had lived there more than 6 months, I had to follow a formal eviction process. I couldn't just kick him out like that. The next day, I went to a lawyer, spent like $300 on a consultation, and the guy confirmed that yes, I had to do a formal eviction. He helped me draft the papers and I gave them to Nathan that same week. Nathan got angry, told me I was a traitor. That mom would be disappointed in me. How could I do that to my own brother when he was going to be a father? I told him that he had gotten himself into that situation with his lies and lack of responsibility. The legal process gave me 2 weeks for Nathan to vacate, and they were the most tense 2 weeks of my life. Nathan didn't even talk to me. He left early and came back late, and I basically lived in fear that he would damage something in the house or steal something before leaving. I called a couple of our uncles, told them the whole situation, hoping that maybe they could make him see reason, but Nathan had already told them his version of the story, where I was the evil brother, kicking him out on the street when his wife was pregnant. Finally, on day 13 of the 2 weeks, Nathan left. He packed his things, not many because he never had much, and left without saying goodbye. I don't know where he went, if with some friend or what, and honestly I didn't care much at that moment. The only thing I felt was relief to have my house back. A month passed. 2 months. I didn't hear anything from Nathan. I changed the locks on the house just in case, cleaned the whole room he had used and finally converted it into an office, and tried to get back to my normal life. Then like 3 months later I found out from an aunt that the baby had been born, a girl, and that Melissa and Nathan were living together again in a tiny apartment that Melissa's mom was paying for. Fast forward to about a year ago, Nathan sent me a message out of nowhere. We hadn't talked in months, almost a year by that point. The message said something like, "Brother, I need to talk to you. Can we meet?" I didn't answer him right away. Honestly, I didn't know if I wanted to get into his drama again. But after a few days, I told him yes, let's meet at a neutral cafe. Nathan arrived looking terrible. He had dark circles under his eyes, had lost like 10 kilos, looked basically destroyed. He told me that Melissa had divorced him, that she had taken the baby, that he only got supervised visits once a week. He told me he had realized he had been an idiot, that he regretted everything that had happened, all that shit people say when they're at rock bottom and need something. And then came what I knew was coming. Nathan asked me if he could come back to stay at my house, just temporarily again, until he got back on his feet. He told me that this time it was going to be different, that he had learned his lesson, that he was going to get a job and pay me rent, that he just needed one more chance. I told him no, just like that. No, Nathan, you can't live with me again. He looked at me like I had slapped him and said, "But I'm your brother. How can you tell me no when you know I have nowhere to go?" And I told him, "Nathan, you had a chance, and you completely blew it. You lied to me. You lied to your wife. You tried to use tenant laws against me. I have no reason to trust you again." He got angry, called me selfish, told me that someday I was going to need help and no one was going to be there for me. The typical things people say when they don't get what they want. He got up and left the cafe without paying his part, by the way, so I had to pay for both things we had ordered. That was the last time I saw him in person. After that, Nathan tried to contact me several more times, text messages, calls. He even sent me a long email like a letter where he basically begged me to reconsider. I didn't answer any of them. Eventually, I blocked him on everything: phone, social media, email, everything. Some uncles called me again, telling me I was being too hard on Nathan. That family has to help each other. But I explained the whole situation to them, about the lies, about Melissa, everything, and some understood, and others continued to think I was the bad guy in the story. It's been like 6 months since the last time Nathan tried to contact me. I don't know how he is, if he got a job, where he lives, nothing. And honestly, I don't care. I know that sounds cold, but after everything that happened, I needed to set firm boundaries. My therapist, yes. I started therapy after all this, because I realized I had problems saying no and setting boundaries. Told me that what I did was the right thing. That allowing Nathan to come back would have only repeated the cycle and would have made me an enabler of his irresponsible behavior. There are still moments when I wonder if I was too hard, especially when I think about the baby. My niece, I barely know. But then I remember everything that happened. The lies, the disrespect. And I know I made the right decision. My house is my space now. I have my office. I have peace. There's no constant drama. And that's priceless. Last week, I was organizing some boxes in the garage, and I found an old photo of when we were kids. Nathan and me with my mom at the beach, or something like that. Nathan would have been like 10 years old in that photo. Me, 14. And we were all smiling. I stared at that photo for a good while, thinking about how things changed so much, about how that kid in the photo became the adult who threatened me with tenant laws. I put the photo back in the box. I didn't throw it away, but I didn't put it anywhere visible either, and continued with what I was doing. I guess that pretty much sums up where I am now with all this. There's no active hatred, but there's also no desire to reconnect. It is what it is, basically.